particular incidents or service calls or investigations that you were involved in that stand out?
John Gacy's house. And at that time I was in the attack unit. And it was a very cold winter, very snowy. And we were assigned to his house. And our assignment was to stay on the property. Had us there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We were at his house in shifts. I worked from midnight till noon, and I worked with another guy. So every night I get in a lounge chair, and I put the blanket around me, and if we were going to sleep, then take a little nap for a couple hours, I go like this. I'll see you in the morning, buddy. He have a fit.
Joe, thank you for being here today. And by way of an introduction, I wanted to provide a brief overview of your law enforcement career. Joe Mauriello started his law enforcement career with the Cook County Sheriff's Police in April of 1977. Joe's assignments included patrol, the tactical unit, the Sheriff's Protective Detail, and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, where he served as an investigator. His collateral duty assignments included defensive tactics instructor, bike patrol officer, and field training officer. Additionally, in 1996, Joe was elected to serve as the chapter president of the Metropolitan Association of Police. He retired from the Cook County Sheriff's Police in May of 2003. After retiring from the Cook County Sheriff's Police, Joe worked part-time for the Wonder Lake Police Department from June of 2013 until October of 2016. Joe, thank you for agreeing to share your story with us.
Thank you.
So what made you decide to pursue a career in law enforcement, and why did you choose Cook County?
That's a little different, I guess. I always wanted to be a Chicago cop. Well, not always, but a friend of mine who lived a block away from me, we're still friends to this day. He's a very good chiropractor, by the way, who I visit once a month, whether I need a tune-up or not. He had a sister, and she was married, and they had a 2-flat apartment. His sister and her husband lived upstairs. He went to the Chicago Police Academy, and this was in the summer of '68. He was involved in what they called the Days of Rage downtown, when all the rioters and all that stuff came downtown. All those communist groups and whatever they were at the time, they all came down there. They pulled him out of the training academy. He wasn't even a full-fledged police officer when he got out. They put him on the street, and he had to be there for the riots, and he was spit on and thrown at and obviously cursed and pushed around. And he would come home. And he would come home at night about 10 o'clock, even though there was a so-called curfew in the city. We were on the far northwest side of Chicago, so it didn't really affect us. So we would sit on the porch and talk about things that 15-year-olds talk about. And he would come home, and he'd come home with ripped shirts, blood on his shirt, frazzled, basically. And he'd come out, and we asked him how his day was, and he would say, let me go clean up a little bit and grab something to eat, I'll be back down. So he'd come back down, and he'd tell us exactly what happened, the inside stuff that were not allowed, I guess you could say, in the news, like, holy cow, and I was like blown away with all this stuff. I'm 15. I really haven't decided what I wanted to do with myself. I was going into my, junior year of high school, I think it was. And, or sophomore year, whatever. And I decided, a few of us would walk home, be 3 of us walk home together. And we decided, we were talking, the 3 of us, and we all wanted to be cops. We just wanted to be Chicago cops. And I applied for the Chicago Police Department, and I was going to be what they had, cadets at the time. They had cadets until the summer of '71, I believe it was. And when I graduated high school in '71, I got a letter saying, you've been accepted to be a Chicago police cadet. And I'm like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever, you know. And about a week later, I got another letter from them that due to budget cuts, they were canceling the program. They weren't hiring any more cadets. They're going to keep the ones they had, and when they're gone, no more. I'm like, what the hell? You know, just went from here to here in a matter of a week. So, but I still kept the faith and so on and so forth. And when I was 21, I took the police test and for Chicago, because they had a hiring freeze because of, you know, they didn't hire enough females or minorities or so on and so forth. You know, when I took it in 75, I believe it was, over 18,000 of us took the test. And a friend of mine who I grew up with, he took the test with me, and the other friend who I'd walk home with, he went to California, became a correctional officer out there. So I took the test, I got the results back. I finished in the top 1,000 or so. I think at 900 I finished there, somewhere around there, which I thought was pretty good considering. And I waited and waited. I never really got a call. I got a call to take the physical and do a blood test and urine test and everything else. And so I took that and waited and waited and never got the call. In the meantime, I had taken earlier, as soon as a few years earlier, I had taken an exam, written test for the Cook County Sheriff's Police. My dad suggested it. He was a Cook County Sheriff's deputy. He started out in transportation, but they got rid of transportation. They offered him a chance to go to police department or patrol, or he wanted to be a courthouse deputy. He chose that because he was older. He didn't want to be on the street. So he told me, go down and take the test. So I did. And I thought nothing of it. You know, again, waiting, you know, all these years. I'm like, what the hell? You know, I'm like, what's wrong with me? You know, you get that feeling. And in the meantime, I worked for the city of Chicago on the back of a garbage truck for streets and sanitation. I did that for 4 years. Had a blast. I had a really good time. Had some good workers, co-workers, had some asshole co-workers. But for the most part, it was very cool. So I get home from work one day, I take a shower, I'm just sitting there in the kitchen having like an afternoon snack or whatever, and the phone rings, and this guy comes on the phone. He says, "Are you Joe Mauriello?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "My name is Gacy," and he said it so fast, I like, what the hell? I said, "Yeah." He says, "Are you interested in becoming the Cook County Sheriff's Police?" And I said, "Yeah." "Who is this?" I said, "Who's playing this game?" You know, and he started laughing. He goes, "My name's Gacy Goransky." And he says, "I went to Cook County Sheriff's Police." He says, "We're starting a couple classes, or would you be interested in joining our department and going through the police academy?" I said, "Definitely." He says, "Tomorrow morning," or not tomorrow morning, I'm sorry, tonight at around 7 o'clock, can you be at our headquarters in Maybrook? I said, "Yeah, I guess so." And I said, "Who is this again?" I was really incredulous. I'm like, "What? No, who's playing this game with me?" He goes, "Come down to the square," as they called it, and gave me the address. I said, "Okay." So I went there, and I went inside, and then I said, "I'm looking for Gacy." And some woman goes, "He's right here." He comes out, and he goes, "I'm Gacy Goransky." I said, "So you are real, you know?" He got a good laugh out of it. He says, "We're starting the class on April 18th, a week from 2 weeks from tomorrow." I said, "Oh." He says, "Can you be here?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Sign these papers. Here's a list of things you need to purchase for the academy, and we'll see you on the 18th. Wow. And the rest is history.
Wow. So you started with the Cook County Sheriff's Police in 1977, correct?
Yes.
What was it like in 1977?
It was another world, okay, from leaving the city of Chicago streets and sanitation to go to be a police officer. It was totally different. It reminded me of basic training when I was in the Air Force, okay? It was, the rigorous, I guess you could say, and it's pretty much set and, and following orders and stuff like that. That was good. I didn't mind it. I don't think I needed it, but I liked it. And it was different. It was seeing people from all over the area, basically, because I grew up on the northwest side of the city, so I only know people from the northwest side. I had people from the south suburbs, the west side of Chicago, the north suburbs, wherever, all over west suburbs, everywhere. And it was nice to see a mixture of different people, and we all became pretty close. That's what I really liked, was we became close. And I think that's what they try to strive with us, is to be close together, not to be, you're from the south suburbs, you're from the northwest side of Chicago, whatever. We became all one, and I think that was the best part.
Did those relationships last throughout your career?
Yes, still to this day. Some have passed away, unfortunately. I miss them. The ones who passed away, I miss them. The one I remember the most, and we had a lot of fun together, was a guy who came from the jail. His name was Gary Garay. Gary's passed away. He passed away about 24 years ago. He was a Vietnam veteran, so he contacted Agent Orange. Mm. And Gary was a great guy. He was a bodybuilder or power lifter. No, he wasn't a bodybuilder. He was a power lifter. Strong as 6 people, maybe 10. And he also wrestled professionally on the side. And I didn't notice at the time. And everybody said, "Oh, we go our separate ways over the weekend. We didn't start hanging out yet with each other." And I had a typical weekend. The girl I was going out with, we went to a movie, went out for a bite to eat, we hung out, so on and so forth. Then everybody asked questions. "How was your weekend?" I did that, and they said, "Oh," stuff like that. And I said, "I also went to a pro wrestling show down at the old Chicago International Amphitheater." And he said, "Oh," he goes, "Did you see Gary there?" And I said, "No." He says, "Dad," they said, "Gary's a professional wrestler." And I went, "Let's see, pardon my French." I said, "Is he a fucking mad dog?" Because that was a big popular wrestler at the time. And he goes, "No, he just wrestles." I said, "Oh," so got to meet Gary. Gary and I started talking. We started hanging out more and more. And it was a lot of fun. He invited me up to Minneapolis with him, where he was wrestling. On a Saturday morning, a cold November morning. It was probably November of '77. We went up to Minneapolis to watch wrestling, and I had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
So when you go to the academy, does Cook County have its own academy?
They still have their own academy.
Right.
They were accredited to have their own academy. We were right there in Maybrook. There was 2 classrooms right there that we were in. There was another class already going through. They were 2 weeks ahead of us. And then there was our class 77-4. And everybody tells me, "Guys, say 77-4. Okay, 77-4. We did that. And there was also a shooting range there, and they had a break room for us, and like that, or you go outside and smoke if you smoked. And we did there, and then they moved the training academy to Triton College later on. That's where I was doing, went for more training, and helping out there, I guess you could say, later on.
So you finish up the academy and you go to your first district?
We didn't have districts at the time.
Okay.
We didn't have districts. It was north side and south side.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So do you go north side?
They put me on the north side, which is fine. Even though I lived in this, north side of Chicago, I was hoping they would keep me there. So never knew too much about the suburbs that much.
Okay.
I'm a city boy, or was a city boy. So I had no idea what was that. Yeah, go meet your training officer, and he'll meet you at the. Well, I knew where this was. Fortunately, I knew it was the old Niles District Police Station on Milwaukee Avenue, just north of Dempster. So I met my training officer there, and we started there. We started on midnights.
So no roll call?
No roll call. We went straight out to the street. We'd meet there, get, cleaning out, take whatever I needed from my personal car, put it in the squad car with him, and he would drive around and say, "This is what we do," and show me all the hot spots of the beat. You know, we do traffic stops and just talk. Lots of talking. And pretty much, you know, it was my first area was what they call the main township area around the old Golf Mill Shopping Center up there. And that was it was interesting. I didn't know, like I said, didn't know Chicago or the suburbs as much as I thought I did.
Did you only have one FTO, or did you have multiple back then?
Back then I had one.
Just one.
Yeah, I stayed with him for 4 weeks, and not to beat my old drum, but he says after like 2 weeks, he says it. I don't know if it was a compliment or an insult. He says he couldn't wait to get rid of me. So I don't know if that was good or bad. And but I stayed for the full 4 weeks with him, and now they pushed another class through. So he had an assignment. You know, I had another guy to work on, to teach, and they put me with another veteran police officer who left later on and became a police officer in San Diego. And I rode with him for a couple of weeks, and it was interesting. We had a security detail. I'm still a rookie. I'm like, this is very cool. And we were supposed to meet the Grand Patriarch of Iraq at O'Hare Airport. I'm like, wow, this is neat. You know, so we go there. We're with Chicago police, and they had us lead the way. They led the way. I'm sorry, they led the way. We went from O'Hare to an old church on the north side of Chicago, around Irving and Damon, I believe it was, something like that. And that's where he was the head of the Assyrian church. Assyrians are people from the Middle East who are Christian. They're not Muslim or anything like that. So we went there, and they fed us. They fed us like we were kings. It was like unbelievable. And you know, they offered us a plate, and we held the plate. And different girls would come by, give you a vegetable, give you meat, give you bread, give you this. And like, okay, one girl had each thing, and we're in the church basement kitchen. And I'm like, well, what the hell? You know, we're looking, and the head of the church comes over, of the parish, wherever you want to call it. He says, well, what do you think? I said, well, this is fine. The food is excellent. He goes, no, I'm not talking about the food. I said, what are you asking? He says, the girls, would you like to meet any of them? They're looking for husbands. I went, nah, I'm good. I mean, they're very pretty girls, but I'm like, nah, I'm not interested. So we did that, and he stayed. He gave a little mass at the church there, and the reason we stayed there because Chicago only stayed in Chicago. They didn't want to leave their jurisdiction. We had to take him to a hotel, a very expensive hotel. I don't know if it's there anymore in Barrington, in Evanston, and we went there, and we escorted him in there and everything like that, and we were getting ready to leave, and he goes, the same guy from the church comes over. He says, no, don't leave yet. We said, oh, well, it's like after hours, we're done. We're on overtime now. My first time overtime, you know, and he says, the Grand Patriarch would like to meet you. I said, holy crap, this is cool. We went in this big suite, and it was like probably the size of a house inside the suite. And he come over, and he shook our hand, which I thought was kind of cool, and he blessed us.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of cool to be blessed by somebody like that. Yeah. And that's how it's, you know, that's my first incident with the guy, with my new training officer. Or he wasn't a training officer. I couldn't even call him that.
Yeah.
I had to call him by his name, Terry.
Wow.
So, and that's how it started.
So give me the 30,000-foot perspective, the overview of your career, your different assignments.
Well, I got cut loose. Like about a week later, they finally gave us our own cars, patrol cars, because we rode single. We didn't ride double like they do in the city or other places. We rode separately, and they didn't have enough cars to go around. So that's why I rode with Terry for a couple weeks. And right away they put me in Leiden Township, which is around Grand and Manheim in the area. And then they put me on the south, not the south side, but in the Stickney area, which I had really no idea where I was at. I was like, where the hell am I? I said, this is like another world, another country. But I survived. Obviously, I survived, and worked back. And then he sent me back up north into past Leiden Township was Manheim. It put me in Palatine, which I had no idea what a Palatine was. And then I went to back to Main Township, where I basically started, and I worked there for a long time. And I was on vacation. I had my furlough coming up, so I took a couple weeks off. Took 2 weeks vacation at the time. So I took my 2 weeks and come back from there, and I get all ready to go back to work. I'm getting ready to leave, and the phone rings at my house, and I said, they said, yeah, this is Sergeant Lyman. I said, what's up? He says, we're starting a tactical unit. We want you to be in it. Would you like to be in it? Yeah, sure, why not? So that's why I started. So right away, went down there, still uniform, nothing changed basically, same squad car. And we went down, I did the interview for the TAC unit, and I got accepted. And we started, I was in the TAC unit from June of 78 to October of 80. And we'd roll 2-man cars, and we would, what they call, I guess nowadays they call it wolf packing. We went into troubled areas in the county, and we used to joke around. We like to inflict our opinion on people who weren't following the law. So I enjoyed that because it made things easier for the people. Prime example was we had a park in Leiden Township. It was in a little subdivision, and it was a triangular park. It was shaped like a triangle. And these kids took it over. Grandmas and moms couldn't take the kids to the park down the swings or the sprinkler. They couldn't. The teenagers would run them out. And I'm like, nah, that doesn't fly. So we just bombarded the park, and we arrested every kid we saw for whatever, spitting, being stupid, wherever we can get them for, we got them. And within a week, we cleaned that park up. And I'm proud for that. I'm happy about that, because we went back about a week later, and grandmas and moms are waving at us. They thanked us because they saw us. They knew who we were. And that I liked. Things like that I liked. So, and then I stayed there till, like I said, the fall of 80 in October. And in September 9th of 80, to be exact, that's when I got hurt. My first time getting hurt on the job. Big time hurt. Injured. And I was off of work for a couple of weeks. I had a operation on from the occurrence. What it was, I guess, we were working down in Homewood, which is way south, almost near the Indiana line. And it was a boring night, and we had court the next day in Oak Lawn. And the sergeant at the time, he was like, "You guys want to go home?" I said, "Oh, I'd love to go home." I said, "Because I'm gonna come back down here tomorrow to go to court." He says, "Go home." He says, I lived in Palatine at the time. He says, "Go home. See you in court tomorrow." I said, "Great." So I go home. I'm listening to the radio, and one of the female officers was on a domestic, like not even 5 minutes from where I lived. So I figured I'd go see her, see how she's doing, because we used to answer domestics one person.
Oh wow!
One person.
Wow.
No one thought that,
Yeah.
And she's a female, so she was short. She can handle herself. So I went there to make sure she was okay, and we BS for a couple minutes, and I said, "Okay, I'm leaving." And as soon as I said that, the other beat car in Palatine, he was at a low-income housing area called Rand Grove Village, and he's there on a shots fired call, and he goes, "I need backup." He goes, "I don't know what I have here." I went, "Holy crap!" So I said, "Well, I'm going to go over to see him." So instead of going home and letting the dog out, I went and backed him up. And he's there with a security guard, an armed security guard in the complex in Grand Grove Village. And he sees me and he comes running over. I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "I got a shots fired call." He says, when I got here, I see two guys walk out of the bushes area. There was a cover of bushes, and they were like not looking at me. He felt really weird about it. I said, "Okay." So we grabbed them, put them by the car. He says, "Watch them for me." And he says, I'm gonna go search the bushes, see what's there. Found the gun. Okay. So the only two there that were near the gun. He goes, "What do I do?" I said, "Ask them who did it." And they're broken English, they're Mexican, and they wouldn't talk. He said, "Now what?" I said, "Arrest them both, lock them both up." So we handcuffed one, put him in the back of the car. We tried to put another guy in handcuffs. He was shorter than me, but he was built like a wrestler, bodybuilder, and he fought with us. I mean, we started on the left side rear passenger door, and we were struggling with him along the back of the car. We wound up almost by the front passenger side on the right, and we couldn't get the handcuffs on him. We had one handcuff on him. We couldn't get the other on him. He was really, really, really strong and probably under the influence of something. And in the meantime, a group, and I mean 20, 40 people ran out of the buildings. And at the same time, they ran out. The female who was at the domestic officer, she pulled up. She tried to help us too. And she literally took the guy and kicked him in the balls, and didn't have no effect on him. We were holding one arm each. She come up and kick him in the balls, and didn't do nothing. I'm like, okay, now we got a problem. So as we're struggling with him, get the handcuffs on, with the security guard who's watching our back, because he's watching our back, I hear thump, 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 and I'm like, what the? And all of a sudden I feel it, thump, crack in the back of my head. She's short. She caught the brunt of the blow, and she went down. She was out. And the other guy I was with, he's a little bit shorter than me, so he caught it a little harder than me. This is more direct, and me being taller, I got it like straight across, no downward motion. Split the back of my head open, right? So the security guard, he caught it first. Because he's facing them, he caught it right here. Split him like a bad dream. And we dropped our prisoner, and the other guy and I we backed up. We kind of ran off from the scene a little bit, like to regroup. And he says, "Okay." He says, "What do we do?" I said, "We got to go back and get her." So as we turn around, there's the guy who hit us with what turned out to looked like an axe handle. Okay. To this day, I still don't know what it is, because it was dark out. It's 10 o'clock at night, basically. So it's dark out, poorly lit parking lot, the whole 9 yards. So he pulls out his gun. The other officer pulled out his gun and shot him. But because he was hurt, I don't think his intent was to injure him. I think it was intent to kill him. But he was hurt. Shot him here in the hip. The guy went down, and his buddies picked him up and he carried him away. I'm like, holy crap. So we're walking, trying to find her to see where she's at, and I walk between these two cars, and the guy we were trying to cuff comes out from between the cars, and he's like this with a handcuff on his wrist, with the open end of the other handcuff. And he's going, "Go ahead, officer, shoot me. Shoot me. I want you to shoot me." I'm like, "Really?" So I pull out my gun, and I'm thinking, do I have the right to shoot him? Which I found out later I did. I wasn't really sure at the time. And I said, if I shoot him, it looks like I picked on him because he only had a handcuff on, not much of a real bad weapon. which it was. It was like a hook. So I pulled out my pepper spray, my OC, and I gave him a good shot. And he goes stumbling off into wherever he went to afterwards. And we found her, and we grabbed her, and we each got in our car. We were still good enough to drive our own cars out. And we grouped down the street. We took the security guard with us. We couldn't leave him there. There's no way. And we're talking. The ambulance pulls up because someone called for help, and they sent the ambulance. And we're talking. She goes, "Why didn't you shoot him?" The female asked me. And I said, "Well, because I only saw the handcuffs." I said, "I didn't think it was right to shoot somebody waving a handcuff at me." I said, "I didn't feel comfortable." He says, "So you didn't see his other hand?" I said, "No." And this behind his back, and on his other hand, he had like a 6-foot piece of chain. And this was to distract me with the handcuff, and he would have whacked me with the chain. He goes, "You should have shot him." I said, if I would seen the chain, I would have shot him. I said, because I know what it would have been about. So we were off of work. I had we all had concussions. We all did, And she got it to where she still has, to this day, we meet for lunch every so often. She still has headaches and stuff like that. I had headaches for probably almost 20 years. Maybe not quite, but almost 20 years. And maybe even longer. And I was having headaches I couldn't see on my right eye. It was still blurry. So I went and had an eye operation. What happened was they did an eye exam. All the muscles around my right eye, got jolted loose. So they took my eye out, laid it on my cheek, supposedly.
Wow.
And they tightened all the muscles up and put it back in. I'm like, okay.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So what happens? You guys regroup. What happens that night? The ambulance shows up?
They all spread. They all ran to different locations. They just weren't ever. So reinforcements came from everywhere. I mean, we're talking even the western suburbs came. Franklin Park, I think, came up, and well, of course, Palatine was there, and the state police. We had Lake County sheriffs there, which was literally not even 5 minutes away from the subdivision. Lake Zurich cops were there. I mean, whatever, were Wheeling, Mount Prospect. I mean, Arlington Heights, they just came from everywhere to help, which was really cool. Two of our guys who I was friends with, they went into this bar that was on Rand Road, Route 12, that was near the county line between, almost in Lake County. It was called Vince's County Line Inn. Vince was a great guy, but he had dirt floors in his bar. It was hysterical. He was like from 1942. The same bar for 40 odd years. And they found the guys there. Oh, wow. They found two of the guys there. The one that we tried to handcuff, he had someone saw off the cuff, and he was dumb enough, but good enough for smart or whatever for me. He kept the cuff and he put it in his pocket. So when they arrested him, they found the cuffs on him and arrested him and and got a call at the same time that they were at the hospital with the injured guy who got shot. Same hospital we were at, being fixed up. It was Northwest Community Hospital in Arlington Heights. So then we got all fixed up. We went. I wanted to go home because Arlington Heights and Palatine were like kissing cousins. They boarded each other. I'm like, good, I can go home. Well, one of the supervisors came, a lieutenant of investigators. He came by and he says, "Are you done?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Come with me." I said, "Oh God, now what?" We went down to Maybrook. It was just down in Maywood there, and I did an interview with the state's attorney. He wanted me. He says, "You have to talk to the state's attorney about what happened." So I said, "Well, you stay here with me." I said, I don't feel good. I want to go home." He says, "Well, I'll be here." So the state's attorney asked me all these questions, and he's on our side. And I turned on him. I said, "Who the fuck do you think you're talking to?" I said, "I'm going to get up and I'm going to kick your ass." And the lieutenant goes, dummy, he's on our side. I said, oops. I said, I'm sorry, but your questions suck. And he says, okay. He said, change the questions around. We talked for an hour. And then they took me home. I'm like, I didn't get home till like 4 o'clock in the morning after all this. And I was supposed to be home at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it was a long day. But we went to court and a couple of hearings, and then they fled to Mexico.
Oh, wow.
So, I'm sure they came back how things are, but after the trial after they closed the trial, they gave me the handcuffs as a souvenir. I still have them. I mounted them. I finally mounted them about a year ago. Put them up in a display case.
That's crazy. Now, they never tried to get the guy that you had in custody, and they never tried to get him out of the squad or anything?
No. Well, we never. Someone must have let him out. I mean, all the chaos is going on. We're talking 40, 50 people there. I mean, they came out of everywhere. And obviously someone let him out. Yeah. That's the only thing I can think of.
Wow. So at some point you end up on the sheriff's protective detail, and you end up at the state's attorney's office as an investigator.
Something like that, yeah. I went back to patrol shortly after all this was over, and I felt capable of going back to work. And I stayed there for a while, a couple of years, and I got asked one of the lieutenants who handed out details and assignments, he asked me if I would like to go to work for the sheriff. I said, like what? He said, be his bodyguard, be his driver. And if you remember anything, I don't know if you remember, we had Sheriff Elrod. Sheriff Elrod was handicapped. He was paralyzed from the waist down. And during the days of rage with all those things back in '68, he saw one of the offenders, one of the hippies, we call them, whatever you want to call them, running away from the police. He tried to throw a rolling block into him, like when he played football in high school, and he missed and it slammed into the side of a building and severed his spine.
Oh wow!
So he did that. So he was a corporation counsel for the city. So through politics and as thank you, so on and so forth, they propped him up to be sheriff of Cook County, and he won. He was a nice guy, nice family, and we would pick him up at his house. He had a condo in Lincolnwood. We'd pick him up and take him down to the Daily Center. We'd help him in and out of the car, et cetera, et cetera. And I had my one month critique. They want to see how he was after 30 days. He says, Joe's a great guy. He says, I can tell he's a good police officer. He says, the only thing is he drives like a police officer. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? What it was we had a big Olds 98. It was like the size of a Cadillac. And we would put him in the back seat, and we would drive to wherever he had to go, personal appearances, functions, family business, so on and so forth. And the car was spotless. I mean, spotless. There wasn't even a crumb on the floor. And we'd drive, and leather seats. Always wanted a car spotless, so I cleaned the leather seats with a nice coating and cleaner. The only thing is, the leather cleaner made the seats slippery. We put him on this side, and by the time I got him to where we were going, he'd be on this side of the car. I'm like, ooh, sorry about that. So I had to learn how to drive like an old man, I guess you could say. So we'd work one day off, 2 days with him. So that was good, that kind of stuff was good. I think I needed that kind of break. And one day we're at his house in the morning getting ready for work, getting him ready. We'd have to dress him. His wife would help him shower and do everything else. But we would, she'd help him get, the basics, brush his hair, go to the bathroom. We would help him put on his shirt and tie and his pants and shoes and socks. So I go down on my knee to help put his socks on, and my knee pops really loud. And I said, son of a bitch, like that. And he goes, Joe, are you fine? Are you okay? I said, yeah, I think so. And he says, are you going to be all right? I said, yeah, I think so. So I went there. So as we got him up, so we got him all ready, I stand up to help him, and my knee just kind of buckled. I said, "Ow!" What happened was I didn't know. I thought it was just, you know, just a sprain or something like that. I tore the cartilage in my knee about the size of a $50.
Wow.
And it wasn't torn completely off. It had like a little bit still attached, and it would wave. It would go. One day it would go this way and it feel good. You go this way and it hurt like hell. I'm like, what the hell? What the hell? So, you know, went to the specialist, and that's what he told me. He says your cartilage is torn. It's hanging on a thread. I said, oh, for God's sake. So I had it taken out, had surgery done. My second injury within 4 years, you know, and it was the dumbest one, I guess you could say. And we had that, and I didn't like the sheriff's detail. It was too political. It was too political. And he says, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I work with the sheriff's police. Right now, I'm on a bodyguard detail for the sheriff." He says, "Oh, that's nice. It's a nice job. Suit and tie work?" I said, "Yeah, 99% of the time, yeah." He says, "Oh," he says, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, if you know the sheriff, he's paralyzed, he's handicapped, and we have to help pick him up, and he's like 300 odd pounds," which he was. Big guy, but because he couldn't move, he couldn't do anything to maintain his weight. He says, 300, I said, "Yeah." He says, "No." I said, "What do you mean, no?" He says, "For at least 2 weeks, maybe even more, you can't do anything like that." I said, "Are you serious?" He says, "Yeah." So they replaced me on this detail.
Oh, wow.
So I hold the record for the shortest time on the sheriff's detail. It was politics though. It was just politics. It was like going to all these political functions, Christmas parties at the time, because it was December of '84 or '83, or yeah, '83, '84, whatever it was, and we stand there in the corner watching him all night until he's ready to leave, and we wouldn't sit. The politicians around us were having a fit that we would sit. Right, we're in a political setting. No one's going to come in and bomb the place.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I didn't like it. Politicians, you know, they were just like I think most politicians are, two-faced. They come and say hi to you, then they leave and they call you every name in a book. I'm like, what the hell? So I got out of there and I went back to patrol, and I stayed there until I got transferred to the state's attorney's office in the summer of '86.
And then how long are you there, and where do you go after that?
Got there in June of '86, and left in the summer of '93, July of '93. They were closing up the sheriff's police that were assigned there. They were taking them out, and they created the State Attorney's Office created their own police department, investigators. So, and I went back to patrol, and I stayed there for the remainder of my career.
So, a good chunk of time in patrol. Traffic stops? Any memorable traffic stops during that time?
Nothing really stands out. I mean, there's no big incidents like shootouts or big fights or anything like that. Just a few strange ones. Stopping for drunk driving and stuff like that. What you suspect them of drunk driving, and we used to carry what they call saps. I don't know if you know what a sap is, and we would carry those in our pocket. And I pulled this guy over by Harper College, and he stops on the side, and as I'm getting out, he starts pulling away. I said, and I'm going, son of a gun. So I pull out my sap, and I wanted to throw it at his car. I figured I'd hit the side of his car to wake, like the big bang noise, and wake him up. Well, I threw it a little bit too far, went through his back window of his car, and it was a perfect shape of the sap. I'm like, oh, okay. He pulls in the park, he jumps out. Don't shoot, officer, I'm sorry. He says, I didn't mean to leave. I said, well, you should be sorry. I said, you're taking off on me. And I said, I don't know what your problem is. He goes, oh, nothing, I was just going home. He was a little bit under the influence. Not a lot, but enough. And I said, And I said, where are you headed? He goes, well, I'm going home. He goes, I live in Algonquin or something. I said, okay. I cuffed him. I put him back in my car, and I went and looked in his back seat, and I found my sap covered in glass and the outline of the back window. I go, oh my God. I said, what do I do now? I said, if I call a supervisor, he'll either shoot him or he'll shoot me.
Yeah.
So I got him out of the car and cuffed him. I said, let this be a lesson to you. Whenever the police tell you to stop, you stop. He goes, yes, sir. He goes, I've learned a lot from you. Thank you so much. I uncuffed him. I let him go home.
That's funny.
So,
You know, the best description I ever heard of a sap is that it's tightly stitched leather with a handle on it and some lead in it so that it doesn't fall out of your pocket.
yes, that's what was weighted down so it wouldn't fall out of your pocket.
So it doesn't fall out of your pocket.
But, and then when I became a training officer, I mean, a lot of traffic stops in between, but nothing real memorable. Just DUIs or just, I rode one guy in Maine Township one time. I got him for DUI, so I wrote him 14 tickets. Wow. 14. I'm like, how, because he was a real pain in the ass. I figured, okay, you want to be a jerk? Let me see who could be the bigger jerk. So I wrote him for everything. Expired plates. At the time, you used to have safety stickers on the cars. I don't, like they have on trucks. I wrote him for that expired safety sticker. Didn't have a county sticker, like a vehicle sticker, for the living in unincorporated. Nothing. I wrote him for everything. Blew a stop sign, didn't signal. I mean, 14 tickets. 14, I think.
They don't do that anymore. They don't. The courts don't like that anymore.
So I wrote 14 of them. And I'm like, holy crap! And the judge looked at me. I'll never forget the judge. He's like, really? I said, what? I said, not a problem. He says, I'm going to dismiss the little ones, the county sticker, the safety sticker, the license plate. You got them for the DUI and for not driving right, like that. I said, I said, sure, why not? And everything else was like, just every regular stop, we assist in police chases or something like that. A few of them, they're not memorable, really. Just, we were working Elk Grove Township where I finished up at, and they had a chase from here. Had a chase from Oak Brook. Okay. And it started in Elmhurst because they fled the Oak Brook Shopping Center, and they took off up 83, and they went from DuPage County, ran into Cook County, and through the Mount Prospect area. So we joined in, myself and a partner joined in the chase, and and they were just starting to do procedures where where you're there to assist, not to take over. That's right. I was like, we're going to like 35, 40 miles an hour tops through Mount Prospect. I said, this is bullshit. I said, I'm done with this. I said, I'm hungry. I want to go eat. So we chased them up a road, and we're on this. I took over the lead. I said, I'm done. And all these coppers are looking at me, and they're like, what the hell? I see the car. I finally get to the car, and I pull alongside them, and they're looking at me, and they're giving me the finger and all this stuff. Like, what really, dude? Come on. So I take my squad. It was Crown Vic, not a Caprice, and I chase them. I literally go like this with the car, lean off to the side like this, and I force them off the road. They crash into it, and I thought it was a tree, but it was really a giant bush. They couldn't go anywhere, and I got caught. You think I would get thanked? All these coppers are going, what the hell? You come in our town and you did this? Yeah. I said, because you guys don't know how to chase anybody, how to stop them. I said, I stopped them. You're welcome. I got my car and left.
So you talked about DUIs real quick. So just to touch base, back when you were first started in patrol and you had DUIs, it was just a ticket back then?
It was. You do the field test, so right. Field sobriety test, and then you take them to the station, and you have them do the breathalyzer. And I was taught how to do the breathalyzer, so I didn't need a specialist to do it. I was the specialist, and we went we write them for the probable cause, improper lane usage, whatever. And then we write them for the 2 tickets: one for driving under the influence, and one for driving with the alcohol content.
But they were actual tickets back. It was just
Tickets.
a ticket back then.
We had ticket
you
book.
didn't have all the forms.
Ticket,
Just a ticket.
No,
Wow.
before they came out in the printer. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So, and then when my last famous one or funny one was a funny one, I had a rookie, and he was, I don't say he was scared to death. He was just Mr. Robot. He sat there in the car, nice, new uniform's nice. He's clean. He's tight. You know, he's looking good. And he was. I talk. So, what do you do on your off days? Oh, nothing, sir. Well, one thing I'm not, sir. I'm Joe. You know, you can call me Joe. We're riding together. Okay. And he told me all this stuff like that, and I couldn't loosen him up for nothing. So we're in Elk Grove, a township area, and I see this kid, who turned out to be a kid driving real bad. Turns out he just had gotten his license. And I said, we're going to pull this kid over. He says, okay. So I said, I'm thinking to myself, I got to lighten this kid up. So we get out, and I walk up to the car, and I said, can I see your license? And he goes, yeah. I didn't ask for insurance and nothing else, and registration. I said, we'll start with the license. And the kid's shaking, and he's on the other side of the car. He's shaking. I'm like, we got to get relaxed here. We got to get relaxed. So I remember this old song from the 60s. It was a group, the Zombies, and they had a song called Time of the Season. And I'm sure you've heard it, and some of the lyrics of the song is, what's your name, right? And he told me his name. And I said, who's your daddy? I said, is he rich? Is he rich like me? That's the lyrics in the song, right? And one of the guys I worked with, and we hung out together like that, he pulled up and he heard me talking to the guy like that, and he goes, I said, what? He says, nothing. He says, I'm leaving. He didn't even say anything. He says, you don't sing to the people. I said, why? I said, why not? Like that. And the kid is like, my rookie is like, what do we do? I said, nothing. I said, the kids just started driving. I said, I don't want to bang them. I said, I just want to holler at him and just tell him to watch how he's driving. I handed him back his license, and he's literally still shaking while we get back in the car.
Wow.
Because he thought he was fine with the traffic stop, but now he thought we were going to get beefed on because I was singing to the kid. I said no. I said I did that so we can lighten up the mood around here. I said it's very hot. It's very hard in here. We got to take it easy. This job is easy when you make it easy. It's hard when you make it hard. Let's make it easy. So we did that. So it was fun. You got to lighten it up. You can't be Mr. Serious 24/7.
What about any particular incidents? I mean, you talked about some very serious incidents, but any particular incidents or service calls or investigations that you were involved in that stand out?
John Gacy's house. I have no other proof to say otherwise. I thought I was the first, but I was one of the first, maybe the second or third one, to meet John Gacy. Okay? I just got cut loose. I was, my rookie year, I was working in Leiden Township. And he lived in Norwood Park. I'm sure everybody knows where he lived. And we went and they said, go to this address on Summerdale and meet the complainant. He's reporting a burglary. I said, okay. So I go there. We didn't have portables at the time. The county, I don't know, the county was not hurting, but they didn't do the necessary things. Can't believe the sheriff's police, the county of Cook for delaying the money and all the things we needed. So anyway, I get to the address, I go knock on the front door. It's John Gacy's house. And nobody answers. And I'm like, okay. So being the dutiful cop I am, the hot rookie and out there to clean up the streets and stuff like that, I go around to the back. And I knock on the back door. Still no answer. I said, son of a gun. So I go back to the squad and I called the communications. I said, listen, hey, the complainant is not answering the door. I said, can you call him back? So I sat in the car for like almost 10 minutes. And dispatcher goes, yeah, he's coming to the door now. I said, holy cow, it takes a long freaking time for him to answer the door. So who knows what he was doing now? I mean, now in retrospect, you're thinking all these things. So he answered the door. He lets me in. We go in the house, and this August of '77. It's 6 o'clock in the evening, hotter than hell outside. Sun is beating down on us, or whatever, everybody. And I go and he closes the door, and the house is black inside. I mean, we're talking black. Black carpeting, or dark carpeting, dark drapes, dark furniture, dark paint on the walls, the whole place. I'm like, what the hell is this? So we go in his office, which was converted from a bedroom. And I said, what's the problem? He says, my business partner came in while I was out to dinner with my wife and kids. I said, oh, okay. I said, what did he do? I said, well, we're not business partners anymore. He took some contracts that belonged to me. So I said, how did he get in? He said, well, he has a key. He got in and took them. I said, okay. I said, so it's not a burglary. He goes, well, what is it? I said, it's a theft. I said, he took your stuff. So, filled out the report and stuff like that. And he had all these paintings on the wall of houses and stuff like that. And, drawings and stuff like that, architecture. And I said, oh, these are pretty cool. He says, you like them? I said, well, yeah. I said, I took architecture in high school. I said, I know, kind of know all this kind of stuff. He goes, oh, he says, do you have a house? I said, not yet. I said, I'm going to get one soon. I was a rookie. Mm-hmm. He says, he hands me his business card. He says, if you ever need anything, you call. And I'll cut you a deal because you're the police. I said, okay, thank you. Left and never saw him again until December of '78 when he got arrested. And at that time I was in the attack unit, and it was a very cold winter, very snowy, and we were assigned to his house, and our assignment was to stay on the property, because when they arrested him, his attorney at the time said, I can't fight the warrant, but as soon as the warrant leaves, or as soon as the police officers leave, the warrant expires, the search warrant. And they said, okay, then not a problem. Had us there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We were at his house in shifts. I worked from midnight till noon. And what we did there was we just watched the house, because we had to be there because the warrant says, they had to be there. So we were there from December, January of 78, 79 till May of 79. Wow. Early May. Until they did all the excavating. Yeah. They found all the bodies there and stuff like that. And what we did, we stayed in the family room, and it was on a concrete surface. There was no crawl space underneath where everybody knows where all the famous crawl spaces and all these things happen. And what I did was, we used to have these body blankets wool blankets that we pick up the bodies in and carry them. Well, if need be, but I never had a chance to do that, on other calls or anything. So I would take the blanket and I would wrap myself up, because there's no heat in the house. Mm. They finally got us a space heater to put in the room. And what I did was I brought a Chase Lounge from home. I threw it in the back seat, because we weren't really doing any police work. We were just staying at his house. So I would get the Chase Lounge, and I would, bring it out, and I wrap myself in a blanket, and we watched TV at night. And about 3 or 4 in the morning, we'd fall asleep. I know we weren't supposed to be sleeping, but you know what? It's the dead of winter. Mm-hmm. Nobody's out. Nobody out. And so we sleep for from 3 or 4 to about 6. And every night when I was there, I was working 1 night and off 2 nights, or off 3 nights. Depends on how many people we had working. And I worked with another guy, and he was a nice guy. We went through police academy together, as a matter of fact. And we were working. And every night he was like, I can't stand being here. He says, this is awful. He says, this scares the crap out of me. He hated the place. He literally hated the place. And he would stay alongside the wall like this all night, and just like this, look around like something was going to jump out at him. And we were, and I said, you got, relax. I said, nobody's going to bother us. So, and again, me being me, I had to lighten up the mood. So every night I get in the lounge chair and I put the blanket around me. And if we were going to sleep, then take a little nap for a couple hours, I go like this. I'll see you in the morning, buddy. He have a fit. He starts screaming. He goes, why you do that right before we go to sleep for a little bit? He says, now I'm going to be up all night and I can't sleep. You got monsters coming in here? I said, we're fine. Like that. I started laughing. One of the last bodies they found, they had to dig up the whole house. One of the last bodies they found one outside under the barbecue pit, and they found one in the center of the floor where I stayed.
Wow.
Then the guy was right underneath me, some kid.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. And he goes, how did you? I said, I didn't know. I said, I'm just guessing. And then, we left in May, of 79, and there was 3 arrests made at Gacy's house. Of course, he was the first, and I made the other 2. I made during a calm night. It was like like in the 20s. So it wasn't 20 below. It was like 20. We hear we see headlights up and down the street, really close to the house. I go, what the hell is this? And I hear noise revving the engine and stuff like that. I open the front door to Gacy's house, and the car goes right by me, like this. I go, what the? It was somebody who was drunk. He was doing donuts and stuff on Gacy's property, and he was drunk out of his mind. He ran over to everybody's bushes on the block and stuff like that. I jumped in the car and I pulled him over. I arrested him for a DUI. Turned out to be the undersheriff's son, nephew at the time.
Wow.
So, and then the other arrest was they were actually tearing the house down. They were finally taking the walls off and the roof and all that stuff. And the chief was there, and the first deputy chief was there, and they were there. They wanted to see their face. They wanted their faces on TV. Good guys, really, really good people. And the city donated these large dump trucks, and they hired a construction company to knock the walls down and everything and dump the stuff in the truck. Blocked my view. I couldn't see anything because the trucks were very big. And the truck pulls away, and there's the first deputy chief hollering. He's hollering my name and everything like that. I'm going, uh-oh. I said, so I run over there. I said, what's the matter, chief? And he goes, I've been looking for you. What's going on? I said, the dump truck blocked my view. I can't see anything. He says, I want this man arrested. What happened was, they only had a police tape, the yellow tape around the house in the front, and nobody was there to tell him no, which was my job. But because I was blocked by the truck, I couldn't see him. He walked underneath the tape and walked into Gacy's house.
Wow.
Before it was totally knocked down.
Yeah.
And the chiefs are in there, and they're all having coffee and donuts and stuff like that. They're on a break. And he walks in, he's looking around like that. The 2 chiefs grab him, and they drag him outside, and they're looking for me. He goes, what happened? I told him what happened. He goes, okay. He says, what are you going to do? I said, I think I'll lock him up. He goes, good answer. So I handcuffed him and take him down to Maybrook, and I got him for trespassing. So, wow. And he threatened to sue me and the county and everything. And he was a reporter from the Detroit Free Press. He came all the way from Detroit, and he was shit-faced because he didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
So, and then from there, we were out there 2 weeks later, and we're doing our patrol work and stuff like that. My birthday's in May, and the young woman I was going out with at the time, we were going to go out for my birthday, but I had to work. So I talked to the boss, the sergeants. I said, can we work days that day? I said, I'm supposed to go out for dinner. She wants to take me out for dinner. Can we do that? He goes, yeah, sure, why not? We'll do that. So we worked days, and we worked up in Palatine. And I stopped at my house with my partner, and let the dog out. I said, let me let the dog out for a little bit. We can get out of the car a little bit, and so on and so forth. And I said, well, I also have Pepsi. He goes, definitely have to get out of the car. I said, okay. So we went upstairs, lived in a condo, and we're standing on the balcony drinking Pepsi. They're like, oh, this is not bad. I can work like this every day, like that. And he goes, yeah. And we're looking, and we see smoke in the sky. And we're looking. I go, what the hell is that, a forest fire? Because that's what looked like a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And the radio dispatcher comes on. He says, there's a plane down outside of O'Hare. We think it's a small little passenger plane. And I'm like, okay. So they said, can any units respond? Yeah, we responded. And as we're getting in the car, dispatcher goes, no, it's a cargo plane. It's a large cargo plane. Be advised. So we get there. We were one of the first cars there. We made it from Elk Grove, from Palatine to O'Hare in probably 15 minutes. Let's just say that. We got there kind of fast, and we were one of the first cars there. That's when it turned in. Everybody knows as the plane crash, where all the bodies, where everybody died on the flight, and a couple of people on the ground. And
Timing-wise, is that the one where the engine came off the wing?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
Flight 191.
Yeah.
American Airlines.
Wow.
And so we, got thousands, people came from all over, and they secured the scene with us. And, the investigators came out, and they got in their little suits, workout suits, and they cleared the bodies, and we protected the scene. And I was supposed to get off at 4 o'clock, I think, 6 o'clock, something like that. I didn't get home till after midnight. And she was there waiting, and she said, she still talks about it to this day. I talk to her every so often. And she says, I'll never, she goes, you came home blacker than black from all the soot and stuff.
Wow.
Your uniform was black, you were black. And he says, you just kept mumbling. I said, I don't remember any of that stuff. I remember being there, remember doing what we had to do, but I don't remember like being in a semi-shock or whatever it was. So never went out for my birthday.
Wow.
So,
how long did that scene last? Do you remember?
we were there. We wanted to go back and help as the tactical unit wanted to go back and help, but our sergeants didn't want us to go back. But they were there for over a week. The county was there, the local fire department was there, Elk Grove Township Fire, and the state was there obviously, and the feds were there, and they cleaned up everything. They literally tore, the people who died were in this old converted hangar that was now a truck repair shop. Everything got leveled. I mean, they just tore everything down, leveled the place. There was a couple of trucks there that were being worked on that got destroyed in the crash. All of this stuff got taken away, and they leveled the field, and they planted grass seed. Nothing happened after that.
Wow.
Until I think I haven't been in that area now for a couple of years, but it was the last time I was there was like a big grassy field, just nothing there.
So when you first roll up, one of the first squads there, one of the first guys there, and you're looking at what's that scene look like?
Chaos, because we thought, because we don't, we had no eyes on the ground, there was no helicopter at the time, we had nothing, just word of mouth. They thought that the plane crashed into the mobile park homes over there. There was 3 in the immediate area of the crash, and then in between the 3 homes was an oil facility, like a refinery, and it had the tanks there to start. And what the pilot did was he saw, he did his best. Every bit of strength he had, supposedly, he guided the plane into the field because he was headed through the parks into the oil refinery.
Wow.
Right there. So he said, he lost everybody's life on the plane, but he spared hundreds more from those trailer parks. Everybody's worried about the explosion from the oil, from the gas refinery. Yeah. The only thing is, talking to the fire department, oil doesn't explode like it does on TV. The gasoline and stuff like that. You put an additive in the gas, and that's what makes that's what helps it ignite. Those things, the tanks and stuff like that, they would have burned like candles for like months, literally months.
Wow.
So obviously the oil was dissolved. I'm like, so yeah.
Have you ever been on a call or been involved in an investigation where you got that feeling that something just wasn't right with it?
Oh, numerous ones. I know that, and there's a few that I felt not right, but I can't specifically. I can't remember them, but I know there was a few that I was not happy being there. Just a few of them, because I don't want to say I was being overconfident or cocky, but I knew my abilities. I knew the people I was with, their abilities, and I knew what would, if anything was to happen, we'd handle it fine. And there's guys with guns, at bars that could have literally turned into a shootout. And back in the same trailer park where the plane crash was next to, I had a call there. The guy was acting suspiciously, and he comes out of his house, his grandmother's house, and he's got a double-barrel shotgun. I mean, like Judd Clampett. I mean, the same one. I'm like, what the hell? And he points it at me. So I hit the ground, and I pull out my gun, my 40, and I hit the ground. And I pointed at him. I said, "Drop that gun now." He goes, "Why?" I said, "Because the next thing you hear is going to be the shot killing you." He literally throws the gun on the ground, and he lays down on the front porch. My backup gets there, and we cuff him. Turns out the gun was locked. You couldn't. It was soldered together.
Oh wow.
Do I know that?
No.
Do I know that? I don't know that. But when you pointed at somebody, it could be anything. So we had that problem. We had stuff like that. It had guns, like I said, guns in bars. Fights in bars. That's what I think. That's the worst one. Is they say domestics are, but I think the bar fights were the worst. And there was quite a few of them back in the day.
Was there ever an incident where you look back and you're like, man, I wish I could do that one again, because I know I could have done it better?
I think the incident in Palatine where we got jumped, I think that could have been handled better. I think we could have dragged that, snapped that guy up faster, throw him in the back of the car and get the hell out of there before that came. I think the plane crash, people were crawling through the bushes to get souvenirs, and we had to round them up and get them out of there. Channel 7, a guy reporter from Channel 7, he walked right up to me, and he says, "I'm supposed to be here." He says, "You get out of my way." I said, "You move one more foot." I said, I'm gonna put this bullet right through your chest." And I pulled my gun out and pointed right at his chest. And maybe I didn't need to do that, but the heat of the moment, all this stuff is going on around us. Maybe I should have just took him to the ground and locked this dumbass up. Things like that. There's a few things.
So what are some of your best memories when you look back on your career?
The best memories, probably the co-workers, the guys and girls I worked with. Okay, the incidents, just the things that happened to us or we responded to, that's, I want to say, everyday occurrences, but it's like an everyday occurrence. But the best is the co-workers. I worked with a great bunch of people. I mean, I can name names until tomorrow. And I got to probably have a story with almost every one of them. There was a few that were bad. I mean, they became police officers because it was a secure job, and they were here for the benefits. Okay, those people I didn't get along with. And I was at that point later on. after I left the TAC unit and came back to patrol or whatever, I would tell the supervisor, I said, I don't want to work with him. I don't want to work with her. I said, I just uncomfortable with people like that are only here for the benefits of the job, the pension, the medical benefits, and so on. So I said, they're not police officers. I said, I can't work with that.
Any stories of interactions, contacts with some well-known people?
I met a few people, working but basically off duty, working security. At Soldier Field, did the Bear games. And I met Bill Murray, and he was fine. He was a little tipsy, but he was fine. Mm-hmm. And I I was assigned one day for one game to Terry Bradshaw. Everybody knows who Terry Bradshaw is. He is like that in person. He is like on TV. He's goofy as hell. We had a great time. We did. We really did. But he was a ball buster. Like that. And my assignment was wherever he went, I had to follow. I'm like, oh, okay. So we're working the sidelines. Before I was near the field, but never on the field. We were at the players' bench and everything. I'm like, well, this is cool because I was a football fan at the time. And we're working the bench, and he goes, "You see that over there?" He says, I never realized that part of the field before. He's like pointing to the end zone. I said, okay. And he says, yeah, look at over there. And he says, by those people wearing those uniforms or wearing those colors. I'm like, yeah, I'm looking like that. Yeah, okay. I said, interesting. I look back because he's standing here. He's gone. I said, son of a bitch. So I'm looking up and down the bench. I don't see him. So, they say that the players are like trees. So I look like this. I don't see him. I bend forward. I don't see him. I look back. I see him. He ducks forward. I look like that, and he starts laughing. He's pointing at me like son of a. So I walk over to him. I said, "You think this is funny?" And he goes, "Yeah." He says, "I think this is hysterical." He says, "You're a great guy." He says, He said, "Other people would probably beat the crap out of me, but you let me do what I want." I said, "What am I here to lock you up?" I said, "It was great." I said, I'm having a great time with you." So I met him, met a few people.
Yeah.
Over the years, working security at the Allstate Arena, you meet all these celebrities, singers, and sports people. Getting back to the wrestling part again, I met probably like I said, every wrestler you ever want to meet, I probably met them. And again, they're like everybody else. There are some really great people, and there's some real pains in the asses. And, it was fun.
Anybody you consider to be a mentor to you throughout your career?
Yeah, it was that Chicago copper that was my buddy's brother-in-law when he was going through the police academy. When I told him I got on Cook County, he says, "You call me anytime, and if you need something, we'll talk." So, and I would see him I wouldn't call him. I would stop by his house when I see his personal car there, and we would talk and stuff like that. And he just gave me advice. He was a very good street cop, tough as they come. I think he wound up killing a couple of guys in gunfights on the west side of Chicago there. But I listened to him. I did. Whatever he had to say, the advice, I listened to him. My dad was friends with a lot of Chicago police officers, and one became a lieutenant. Very, very well respected, very well known. And he could come over. I was still living at home. He come over to congratulate me. I said, "Well, thank you." He's like, and he asked me how it went, the police academy, and what am I think? And I said, told him all the things I was happy about and stuff like that. And he said, "I'm going to give you a piece of advice." I said, "Okay." I said, "It'd be great." And he winked at my dad, and I went, "Okay." He says, "Don't ever sleep facing the sun." I went, "Okay." He says, "You'll know what that means later on in life." I said, "Okay." So,
Do you think the job had an impact on your family?
I wasn't married at the time. I was when I first started, up until the late winter of into 81. I was going out with a young girl or woman, whatever you call it, and we had plans to get married, but we didn't. It was like I think she supported me wholeheartedly, and I believe she did. But I just felt we were drifting apart. I don't, maybe the job was that. Maybe her career was blocking us. Maybe mine wasn't blocking us. And we drifted away from each other. I met a woman later, about a year and a half later. Yeah, about a year or so later, and we hit it off, and we got married. But I think I don't think being a police officer was her cup of tea. Me being a police officer. So we drifted away from each other. We drifted away pretty rough moments. We wound up, after I retired, we wound up getting divorced. So yeah.
How long were you married while you were on the job? How long were you married to her?
Legally, I guess you could say 25 years. Okay, from 82 till 2007. But the last 10 years, we led separate lives. We shared a house, but she did her thing, I did mine. We never met in the middle for anything.
Looking back, do you have any regrets when you look back at your career?
Yeah, there was a few things I wish I would have done. I would a couple units I should have requested transfer to, and I didn't at the time. Because I was working a couple of part-time jobs and they were paying well, and I thought if I got transferred to these places, I would lose those part-time jobs. And I had 5 kids at home. Okay, ranging from late teens to like 7, 8 years old. Okay, and 5 of them in between, in there. And I'm thinking, she doesn't work, I work. I said, I don't know how much money I would lose if I went to these specialty units that they would call them.
Mm-hmm.
So I regret that. I could have, talking to the guys who were there after we all retired and got together, and the guy goes, "Oh, you should have joined. You would have been, you would have had some overtime. You would have been making more money, things like that, and all these other assignments that came in." I said, I didn't know. I didn't know who to call, who to talk to.
Salaries back then, they weren't what they are today.
Oh, no.
You had to have another job to make ends meet,
There
especially
was-
if you had kids.
Yes, there was one time, for a couple years, I think from like 90 to 93, I think it was. For 3 years, I had 5 part-time jobs.
Wow.
5. Now they weren't every day, but one week I'd be working here, a couple of days later I'd be working here. One week I'd be working all these almost a whole straight week, but other part-time jobs and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, and that by itself can take a toll on the family life too. You have to have those jobs, just less time you're home with the
Right.
family.
That had an effect. I know. Working for the state athletic board for boxing and wrestling, that took me away from home quite often. And I did boxing shows and wrestling shows for the pros all over this state. I mean, I went from Rockton all the way in the northwest corner of the state near Galena. Then I went to a town called Elizabethtown, and another town called Dupo. That one's along the Mississippi, and one's along the Ohio River. I'm like, I didn't think these places existed.
Wow.
I mean, then you had to drive there. So
Yeah.
I cheated one time. I took the Dupo is there along the Mississippi, just south of St. Louis. Airplane flights were cheap.
Yeah.
Before 9/11. So I think it cost me $97 round trip to St. Louis from O'Hare. Okay.
Yeah.
Rented a car. It turned out cheaper. The state reimbursed me, but still was cheaper. Cheaper than driving, faster than driving, obviously.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea where Dupo was. I have still don't know to this day where Dupo is. Well, I do really, but it was southeast of St. Louis. So you're pretty far. I'm like, holy crap.
So how did you know it was time to retire?
A lot of things are going on. My marriage was really hitting the pits. It was really getting bad. We were arguing all the time. My dad was still alive at the time, and he was getting sick. My mom died a few years earlier, and he missed the hell out of her. He never talked about it, but I know he did. In fact, on they had an answer machine, and my mom recorded her voice. You've reached, the Mauriellos, blah, 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 whatever. I called her and I hear her voice. I'm like, this is not good. I said, it's bringing me down. I don't want to hear this. So I told him, and he finally removed it. But he missed her. He's an old-fashioned Italian. Mm-hmm. He was a professional boxer. He boxed all across the Midwest and New York. I think he boxed. And he never said much. He talked, but he never opened up about his feelings. Never. Nothing. So, but he finally said, when he was, right before I retired, he says, I just miss your mom. I said, I'm sure you do. I said, but you got to go out there and just be with friends again. And he did for a while, and then all of a sudden he just reversed. He wouldn't go out. He wouldn't go out anymore. He wouldn't go see friends and stuff like that. And he got real sick and passed away. And at the same time at work, they made a whole bunch of new sergeants, and they were all politically connected. They were all godchildren of the current sheriff. They're all his godkids. He must have had 1,000 godkids. And I'm like, what the hell? So, and of course I was the old veteran street cop, and kind of knew what I was doing, I think. And I was on a couple calls, and he's the new sergeant. And he comes, and he's like, he's showing off his sergeant stripes in front of the people. And he's saying, you do this and do that, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, Sergeant, no problem. And he'd leave, and finally, and I'd go back to doing what I knew was right after he left. And one time it was like, I think I had a serious accident, PI, we thought it was going to be a fatal, but it turned into just a PI. And he come to the scene, and I had it under control. Because I've been doing this for 1,000 years, mm-hmm. You kind of know what you're doing. I had other officers helping me, the fire department. We had it under control. And he comes around, and he says, well, I want this done, and I like this. We should be doing this. And he's pointing all these things. I said, no. I said, this is how I do it. This is how I've been doing it for over 20 years. I said, you need to get out of here. I said, let me handle this the way I know how to handle it. And he got all huffy and left. So we had roll calls at the beginning of the shift and at the end of the shift. And we go to the end of the shift roll call, and I'm still hot. I'm still mad. And he comes in, and he slams the paperwork down. He goes, well, some of us think they know everything. They don't know how to be police officers. He says they don't want their supervisors there, and they want to run the show themselves. And everybody knows it was me. Mm-hmm. Okay? I went, yeah. Then he goes, let's not forget, I'm the sergeant here. He goes, what I say goes. And I said, now you interrupt. I said, you were wrong. I said, you had no business being there doing what you were doing. But I'm the sergeant. I said, okay. I said, there's a problem with you and I. He said, after work, after roll call's over, you and I can go outside and talk about it. He threw his stuff down. He ran to the watch commander's office and beefed and complained about me. So I think, okay. Said I threatened him. I said, okay. So I go home. I'm still angry. Because he had no reason to do what he did. The next morning, I'm getting ready for work or afternoon. I get a phone call right before work, and he goes, and it was the district commander. I said, yeah, and I've known him a long time. And he says, before roll call, come see me. I said, okay. So he says, so I get in his office, and he goes, you and I have known each other a long time. I said, yeah. I said, we have. He says, you're a great cop. He says, I really like having you around. He says, but you can't talk to my sergeants that like that. I said he interfered. I said he had no business doing what he did. He says, well, he also came in and complained that you're very handsy with people. I said, that's what I was taught to do. I said, take them down and lock them up. Cuff them and lock them up. That's what I was taught. He says, we don't do that anymore. He says, you ever consider retiring? And I said, let me think about it. And I gave my answer about 2 days later.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy that it came down that way.
I wanted to stay a couple more years. And I wanted to stay, to be around for my dad and stuff like that. Because I was living out in Crystal Lake at the time, and he's still in the city. So I wanted to be there, But, politics got me out. Yeah. Literally got me out. I was bitter for a while. I was glad to be gone. I missed the guys and the girls, whatever, the people I worked with. But, politics. I wasn't, what did someone call me? A conservative white boy from the north side of the city, from the north side of the county. Doesn't fit with the way Cook County was going at the time. I said, yeah, that makes sense.
Do you miss the job?
Some things. I think I missed, again, the camaraderie. Worked with, like I said, a great bunch of people. I had some good rookies. I trained. I thought they were all capable in their own way. I miss being involved. Okay, but I don't miss the politics of it all. And I see it more and more each day, because I'm still friends with a few of them that are still on the job, and I hear from them, and I'm like, that's crazy. And a few of them would say, God, if you were here, they would either suspend you or fire you for the type of cop you were. I went, okay, very nice to know that stuff. So I do miss it though. There's a lot of this. That's why we watch On Patrol Live on weekends, just to sort of reminisce a little bit, that kind of stuff.
So what are you doing now?
After I retired, I started working for United Airlines. Their world headquarters was on my beat at the time. And I had a lieutenant who said, whatever you do, he says, you make United Airlines people happy. Whatever they need, do it. And I said, okay. So I would stop in there every day, maybe every other day. And I don't schmooze anybody, but I would just see how you're doing. I talked to security. I talked to a couple of supervisors. You need anything? Is anything going on? And they liked that. Mm-hmm. They liked it. They liked that. They had their training center there, and they had like a building that looked like a hotel, looked like a Marriott or something, and it was there, and the flight attendants would train downstairs in the classrooms, and they would live in the dorms upstairs. Went there a few times, and girls being girls and guys being guys, they wouldn't like each other, and they get literally fights. I mean, scratch fights and scratch them up fights, and you had to pull them apart and break those things up. And United Airlines like that. And a few things I did for them, they asked a few things like, there was a parking problem there. The new president, his window to the outside faced the back, where in the front building was the headquarters. The second one was like where they kept the radar and other official stuff back there. And people would come every day, pick up their spouses or boyfriends or girlfriends, whatever, and they would park in the fire lanes on both sides. And And it was like, you couldn't get through. So he says, so he brought me, so they called me up, the United supervisors or security. He said, the president wants to see you. I said, president? He says, yeah, of United. I said, oh, okay. I don't know. So I go there, and he said, and I met him, and he says, what can you do for me? I said, what do you need? Told me what I told you. I said, let me look into it. So I run through the county ordinances, and I saw a couple of townships that were down in Orland Park and Lyons and a few other. They had what they called enabling ordinances, where you can do things. And what I did was I wrote up a memorandum, I wrote like a 4-page letter or something like that, asking if we can mark fire lanes inside the United Airlines and enforce and keep them enforced. You couldn't do it on private property. They didn't want that. No one wanted it. And they came back to me. He goes, well, maybe you shouldn't do just United Airlines. I said, oh. I said, what else? And they said, how about the trailer parks? Because they had like 4 of them. And people were double parking there in fire lanes and so on. It's like, but we couldn't write them. Couldn't do nothing. So I rewrote my information, included in the trailer parks, brought that ordinance to the Elk Grove Township board, and gave like a 10-minute speech. It asked like 1,000 questions, and they passed it.
Wow.
So, and within a week after I had the ordinance on my side, we cleared up the traffic in between the 2 buildings at United, and they loved me for it. And like, oh my God, you did great. Okay, it's just part of the job. I said, no, nothing outstanding. Just wrote an ordinance to help, and we got wrote a couple tickets, parking tickets, and people weren't happy, but oh well. And they were forever grateful. And about a month later, or 2 months later, they called me. The president wants to see you again. I said, oh my God. So I go back. They said, we're only joking. We want to ask you a favor. I said, sure, what do you want? They said, would you be interested in flying to Australia for us? I said, oh, hell yeah. I said, not a problem. They said, okay. They said, you have a passport? I said, no, I don't have a passport. So they said, okay, let's go downstairs. We went into the sub-basement. They took my photo against a backdrop like this, and they handed it to a runner. They said, go down to the passport board, people, and bring him back his passport. And usually, stuff like that usually takes a couple of days. I went down there at 3 o'clock. I had my passport by 7.
Wow.
And I was fighting rush hour traffic to and from.
Yeah.
So I went to Australia for United Airlines, and I did myself and another officer, we escorted a guy back to Australia. And he was a big guy, real big guy. And he I didn't say overdose, but he took quite a few of the equivalent of Valium on a flight over from Australia to San Francisco. And on the flight, he's drinking. He figured he took about 8 doses of the Valium, and he was drinking wine and beer on the plane. They don't mix. So on the flight, the captain goes, as you look on the left, you see the islands of Hawaii. He's a big guy. He gets up out of his seat. He starts hollering at people, bring this plane down. And he says, my son's is in Honolulu. I have to go visit my son now. And he's running up and down the aisles. So they subdue him, and they asked him. Then the judge, like they do most 99% of the time, they'll ask, how did you get here? And the United representative will say, we brought him here. Well, United, you brought him here, you bring him back. Well, they didn't want him on the flight by himself, so they asked me to go, and they asked me to pick somebody to go with, and we brought him back to Australia.
Wow.
So then I did that. I did Australia, New Zealand, Germany, South Korea, with a stopover in Japan.
Now, is
And
this when you're retired or still on the job?
Australia, I was there while I was still working. I was burning up my vacation days. And it was after the job. And I went to England 8 times. So almost had a trip to Japan and another trip to not Venezuela, Paraguay and Paris.
It's a nice gig.
Yeah, it was. I liked to travel. I liked to travel at the time. Now, not so much anymore, but it was fun. It was interesting.
So do you have any words of advice for someone that might be interested in becoming a police officer, or maybe somebody who's thinking about retiring?
Well, I have a son. He's a deputy sheriff in Galveston County down in Texas. So, I advised him. I said, for his circumstance, he's born and raised in Illinois. Did 2 stints in Iraq with the Army. So he's a little worldly. But I advised him. I said, you're not from Texas. You're not from the Galveston area. I said, you're literally an outsider from the north. I said, you need to calm down. You need to take your time, and you need to think about things. I said, they're looking at you right away because you're not from here. You're not from there. So, but that was my advice to him. My advice is, know what you're getting into. Know what you're getting into. I said, my advice is, it's not the same than when I started, 48 years ago? Nothing's the same. Nothing. The only thing maybe the same is the uniform. Nothing else is the same. And my advice is to listen. Don't speak often. Just listen up more. And for retirees, have a plan. Have a plan. Have something to do with yourselves. I have lunch every so often with a bunch of guys, and we talk about the old days a little bit. And a few of them can't give up that we were police officers. I miss the job. I miss this, miss that. I said, you know what? We're in our 60s and 70s now. I said, it's time to let it go. Just enjoy it. Enjoy what you have now. Because a few of them didn't work part-time like I did. I did all these things part-time, and they had no plan. They go home and they sit and watch TV or read or work on the internet. They don't have I said, work part-time. Find something to do part-time, just to get you out of the house, get you away from your sitting there in the dark thinking about all the things you did and wish you still can do.
Joe, I thank you for the advice, and I thank you for sitting down with us and
thank
sharing
you.
Your journey with the badge.
I hope it was good. I hope I made some points and made some good points, told some interesting tales.
For sure.
All true, by the way. All
Sure.
true.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.